Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Drum Major's office here at the Royal Marine School of Music. My name is Drum Major Nathan Crossley, and thanks for joining me for this masterclass behind the scenes, talking a little bit about how we start putting together a marching display. Going to go through quite a bit this morning, some of the ins and outs of what we do as drum majors in the Royal Marines, the processes that we go through to put together a display right from scratch. So right from the moment we find out that the event is in, what processes we go through to start putting together the display itself, all the way through to rehearsing it and putting out the final product. A little bit about myself to begin with then. I am currently appointed as the Drum Major Training. That means I sit at the Royal Marine School of Music, and my main job here is to carry out training of everything drill and ceremonial for the Royal Marines Band Service. So the guys do their initial training at Commando Training Centre Royal Marines. Once they finish that process, they then join us for their Phase 2 training here in Portsmouth. And I look after everything to do with parade band, the drill side of things, ceremonial training once they're here. Aside from that, other responsibilities that I have, I'm the company Sergeant Major of Training Company as well, so anything to do with discipline, uniforms, bits and pieces like that, quite a bit of admin with it, that's all my part of ship as well. So quite an interesting job. I joined the band service in September 2007. Had some fantastic times out with the Corps of Drums in my kind of earlier career. I was fortunate enough to spend 2 years on board HMS Bulwark. Two main jobs with that one. Initially as a ship's bugler, but also working with 4 Assault Squadron Royal Marines as a driver as part of the Amphibious Beach Unit on that. It was a fantastic opportunity. Great opportunity to work with some of the sort of wider Royal Marines Corps, which was great. Done numerous Royal British Legion Festivals of Remembrance at the Royal Albert Hall, which are fantastic, and National Acts of Remembrance at the Cenotaph in London, which are always highlights of the year for me. Particular events that kind of stick in my mind was fortunate to be part of the band involved in the opening ceremony for the Rugby World Cup in 2015 at Twickenham Stadium. By far probably my favourite event that I've had the privilege of sort of taking part in. Then a little bit later on, I took up my first appointment as a drum major of the band in Scotland in November 2017. And had a fantastic time up there north of the border. It's fantastic location, thoroughly enjoyed my time up there, and whilst up there was lucky enough to deploy on board HMS Queen Elizabeth for Westland 18. So that was the first time that the aircraft carrier had gone across the Atlantic and was operating the F-35 jets for the first time over in the USA. And that was absolutely fantastic. 4 months away, some great gigs that we had on board there and out in the States as well. Absolutely fantastic, really enjoyed that. So I've done quite a few bits and pieces. I've got a few notes in front of me just to make sure that I don't go sort of too far off what I'm going to be talking about. So I'll start off again just kind of following on from that, a little bit about the path to becoming a drum major. So as it stands within the Royal Marines, the drum majors are selected from the Corps of Drums. The process starts off with showing an interest in it initially. You make an application to the Corps Drum Major to be considered for the course. You're then selected to attend the Drum Majors course, and on successful completion of that, you will normally take up an assistant drum major's position at one of the 5 bands across the country. And once you're there, it's a case of waiting for a position to come available. before taking up your appointment as a fully fledged drum major. So that's how we kind of operate it at the minute. That's sort of the main path. Drum major isn't the only option for the corps of drums. There is the bugle major route as well, or sort of the IC corps of drums. So that's normally a senior NCO in charge of the various corps of drums. So there's different routes that you can kind of go. For me personally, it was right from the beginning of my career, I always wanted to be a drum major, so it was a fantastic privilege to sort of finally get to that position in November 2017. Before we go too far, happy Armed Forces Day to everybody who's celebrating that today. Slightly different guys than what it would normally be. It feels quite unusual, I have to admit, to not be out on parade somewhere. Although looking out the window, you might be able to see it's a little bit damp down here in Portsmouth this morning. So I'm not complaining too much being in a nice dry office for this morning. So whatever you're doing on this Armed Forces Day today, enjoy it. There's a whole heap of events throughout the day, kind of on various social media channels, various sort of groups streaming bits and pieces, yeah, so do enjoy that. Hello to the guys at Brentwood Tattoo. Yes, when I was checking my emails this morning, that actually flashed up on my calendar this morning. Yeah, we would have been doing the Brentwood Youth Tattoo at the minute. Shame that couldn't go ahead, obviously for obvious reasons, but we look forward to being able to get involved in that hopefully next year. Hello to everyone in the various kind of cadet units who are sort of saying hello to us this morning. Good to see you all here. Few questions already kind of popping up. I will keep half an eye on those. If they're sort of quick and easy ones, I'll try and address them as they pop up. But I will have a good look through them sort of towards the end and just make sure if there's any kind of crucial things that I've covered them. It may well be that I'm already going to cover them as we go through there. One that flashed up earlier on there was a quick question about why drum majors don't get involved in the Mountbatten Festival of Music. Well, actually they do. You just don't see them. So we do normally have a couple of drum majors who take care of the security arrangements for the Mountbatten Festival of Music. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, there's not a great deal of marching goes on apart from the corps of drums on the stage. There's not a lot of room, so there isn't a whole heap for us to do. Certainly not in uniform, but we are there. We're just a little bit more in the background than what you would normally see us. Good morning, Sandyman23. Thanks very much for that. Good to see you. Good to see you on that one. So just having a look at what we've got on the notes there. So we've got a decent number of people in there at the minute. So let's go into the very beginning of the process then. First and most important part of putting together any kind of display is to make sure you get enough detail about what it is that you're actually required to do. Okay, it might sound like an obvious point, but it's incredibly important to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So it's important to make sure you know the dimensions of the area that you're going to have to actually perform in. That's absolutely crucial. Great if you can have them supplied to you. Even better if you can actually get to the ground itself and visualize it yourself. Certainly from our point of view, we would always want to see the display area whenever possible. It's amazing the difference of opinion when it comes to dimensions and what one person would consider a certain size. Actually looking at it, knowing what we need to achieve in that area, it may well actually be quite different. The ground might be fairly uneven. There might be duck ponds in the way. That might sound flippant, but it's happened. So it's really important to go and have a good look at the area that you're actually going to be playing in, and start putting that into the context of what time of the day you're going to be doing the display as well. Is it going to be in the evening? What time of year is it? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be dark? Is there lighting there? All these things that are really, really important to kind of take into account. The worst thing that you could possibly do is go see something in the day, plenty of light, not a problem at all. You don't realise that there's no actual kind of artificial lighting whatsoever. You turn up to do the display at 9 o'clock in the evening, it's pitch dark, and the bandies can't see their dots. So that doesn't tend to work so well. So all those kind of things, have a good think about them, have a good discussion with the people organising the event, and make sure that you kind of get all of that information. As well as that, find out who's going to be there. Find out if there's going to be a VIP. Is there going to be somebody, a sort of senior military officer or sort of senior guest of honour who's going to be taking a salute at the end? Is there going to be a requirement for a report? So at the end of the display, normally the director of music or the bandmaster will actually go and report to whoever the VIP might be, and sort of effectively kind of ask permission to leave the parade area. So is there going to be that kind of person there? Who are they going to be? Where are they going to be stood? Can you suggest where they stand? All these kind of conversations that can go on to make sure that you know where the main focal point is going to be for your display. Where are you going to march on from? How long does it take to get there from the changing area that you've got, so that you can plan the display itself, but you can plan everything around that as well. What time do people need to be changed and ready? Because it takes you 5 minutes maybe to get from the changing area to where you're marching on from. Make sure you know the route to get there so you don't end up wandering around the grounds of some old house somewhere, lost trying to find the display area. These things can happen. All right, so use that opportunity right at the very beginning. Do your recce's, get up there and have a look at what you're actually dealing with. That's really, really important. Once you've got all that information, you know who the VIPs are. That might then feed into your musical selection. So before you can start designing any movements, you need to shore up what the music is that you're going to be playing. Different people will do that in different ways. Normally for us that will be a discussion then with the director of music, so the officer in charge of the band, or the bandmaster, depending on who is going to be conducting the actual event itself. And discussion between them and myself as the drum major, in terms of what's going to sound good, what are the band playing currently at the minute. For us, there's definitely an element, particularly when we're busy in the summer, we genuinely might not have time to put in a lot of rehearsal, learning new music, brand new music for every display. So we might want to look to use something that we've already got up and running. Or actually we might have a little bit more time and we might want to come up with something completely bespoke for that event, including something that maybe has been written by or arranged by one of the talented guys in the band service as well. So that conversation will happen. Again, thinking back to the VIP, and you'll see sort of as we kind of go through these various bits and pieces how all of this starts to link in. Good morning to the Imperial Corps of Drums, Liverpool. Welcome to you guys, and same to the older Basing Corps of Drums. So depending on who the VIP is, or depending on what guests might be there might be certain regimental pieces of music that need to be included in the display as part of the march off, or it might be a nice nod to certain people there, or certain events maybe, to include certain pieces of music. So all of this will happen right at the very beginning in those discussions when you're putting together the musical program. Once you've got that, you are then in a position where you can start actually coming up with the display itself. So right at the very beginning there, you want to start coming up with some ideas what shapes you might need to do, sort of various bits and pieces to make the display a little bit more interesting. You can march up and down in straight lines all the time, that's fine. But actually, we will generally try and kind of put a few different bits and pieces in there, just to kind of show what's going on. Jake Scott, thanks very much for your question. I will come on to that. That's something that I'll be talking about a little bit more in the parade management side. So I will come back to you, Jake. I'll just make a note of that one as well. Very good question. We do have a process for that. We do have a plan. So you're going to start putting together your shapes. You're going to have an idea of maybe a finale shape where you want to end up for your kind of finale piece of music. Again, depending on whether or not it's an evening display or a military display. There might be a ceremonial sunset ceremony that needs to go on the end of the beating retreat. So that needs to be considered. Where are the corps drums going to be? They're the ones who are going to be playing the bugle call sunset. Where do they need to be? How's that going to fit in? And then from that you can kind of start working backwards. Within our beating retreats or our marching displays, we will normally incorporate a drum static or a drum display by our corps of drums. So there'll be a point at which you want to bring the corps of drums out and give them the opportunity to sort of separate from the band slightly, and then kind of move into their own shapes or their own kind of routine. You then need to bring them back to the band. We will normally start a sort of display with a quick march, then going into a slow march, and then another quick march before we then move into the drum display and kind of the final parts of the display itself. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to create some more shapes? Are you going to have the band splitting maybe into two parts and moving away from each other? All of these things you can start thinking about, and you can start coming up with your plan. Now there's lots of different ways to do that. Some people like to draw shapes out on pieces of paper. Some people, for those of you old enough to remember Subbuteo, fantastic game. Some people start moving around their Subbuteo men or little kind of figures around, starting to kind of visualize where members of the band are going to be. There are pieces of software available to use this. They generally tend to be quite expensive, and I've got to be honest, for what we do within the Royal Marines, they're a little bit too advanced is the wrong way of putting it, but they don't necessarily suit the kind of display that we do. We tread quite a fine line within the Royal Marines. There's, as I'm sure everyone will appreciate, there's a tremendous amount of tradition associated with the Royal Marines, as there is with the Navy and indeed the rest of the military. We've got a phenomenal amount of history within the band service specifically, and traditions that we need to uphold, and it's really important that we maintain those throughout everything that we do. There's always room to kind of experiment a little bit and kind of push the boundaries, but a lot of that is going to be dictated by the type of event that you're playing at, and some events are going to be much more traditional and going to need to sort of stick much more to our kind of known traditions, and other sort of events might allow you to just kind of play around with it a little bit more. But generally speaking, the various softwares are focused a lot more on kind of large drum corps and kind of the sort of band and bugle sort of type thing. And they can be quite expensive as well. So me personally, I don't use that. PowerPoint is a fantastic tool that I use to start kind of putting some of the displays together, and I'll show you some screenshots from that in a minute. Paul Brown-Nat, sorry, I'm not going to play any music. I say sorry, it's probably good news for music lovers everywhere. So something to note for the drum majors, certainly in the Royal Marines, although we come from the Corps of Drums. Once you get to drum major, your drum and your bugle, they get signed back in to stores, and I professionally play a desk most of the time now. So I'm not personally going to be playing any music. There is a little bit of music in some of the video clips that I've got. So I have got some clips from the 2018 Horse Guards display to show you, to kind of illustrate some of the points that I'll be talking about later on. So you'll at least be able to hear something, albeit not me playing it. Like I say, probably good news for music lovers everywhere. So I use PowerPoint. Very rarely will I go through and come up with the whole display and plan it to the nth degree on PowerPoint, match it up to the music. It's not that helpful to do that, but actually as a tool to start setting out the various shapes, I find it really, really useful. So if I just flash up some of these photos here. So this is some of the stuff that I'm doing, getting ready for the School of Music's beating retreat at the end of this term. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. You can see it's probably a slightly confusing mishmash of colours, but everything's colour-coded, and for me that's so that I know where key people are all the time. So the outline of the various circles, whether you've got the reds, the greens or the blues, for me that's telling me who is on the outside of the band, who's in those kind of middle files and who's right in the centre, and that's really important. When you're making the shapes, when you're spreading people out, splitting, that's absolutely fine. It's really important that when you reform those shapes again, though, that everybody is back in the right order, and the guys who are supposed to be on the outside stay on the outside, and the guys who are supposed to be on the inside are back on the inside as well. So that's why I do that. And then for this particular display that I'm working on at the minute, I need to know where two specific cymbal players are, so they're the dark blue circles. I need to know where the bass drums are, they're the green. I need to know where the tenor drummers are, they're the ones who are in yellow, and then the chorus drums are the guys at the front there, and they're in the red. So that's how I kind of set up my band, and then once I start kind of going through into it, I can start splitting the band off into different shapes. We've got a bit of a three-way split kind of going up there, with sort of some of the band going off. So again, you can see where everyone's kind of sitting with that one. And what we've got here is starting to get ready for one of the finale shapes again. So you can see how people have kind of opened up, but I can still see where all those kind of key personnel are, so that I can kind of move them around into different positions. Jay Scott, if you're on parade, does the drum major have to halt the band before the principal director of music takes control? So generally speaking, the band, if there is a director of music or a bandmaster in front actually conducting, then the band are generally not marching up and down. They will normally be at the halt. The only time where that might be slightly different is if you're in kind of a big finale piece or sort of a feature piece of music. The band might be at the halt to begin with, but there might be individual movements that happen sort of throughout that, in which case the director of music may still continue conducting throughout that, because actually once everyone then turns to face and finishes those movements, they need that focal point to lock into. The Festival of Remembrance at the Albert Hall is a very good example of that. A lot of movement going out throughout, but the principal director of music will be on the steps conducting. That's partly for the band who are playing and moving around, so the Royal Marines Band in the arena itself, but that's also to make sure that everybody is staying in time, because there'll be members of the Tri-Service Band on the stage who will also be playing throughout that. You might have noticed in past years that they'll be playing on the stage as well, or we might have our own ancillary percussion or bass sections playing along. So the principal director of music in that instance will be making sure that he's keeping those people all the way at the back of the hall in time with what's going on in the arena itself. So going back to this, so we can go into some of the positions here. So we've got some video. James Groves, yeah, don't worry, it was just me waffling about my career a little bit at the start. It will be on YouTube afterwards, so do have a look at that. So we've got this video just here. This is just simulating one of the movements that we're gonna use, how the band will kind of split out. The movements itself aren't overly realistic, but it gives you a good visual picture of how some of those movements will happen. For the guys who might want to have a look at using PowerPoint, certainly in the later versions of it, you've got one of the transition animations between slides is called Morph, and that's quite a useful tool. You can Google sort of instructions on kind of how to use that to its best. It's quite user-friendly, and that will give you quite a good picture of how some of the movements work. This next video is a little clip of how we're going to be moving in one of our finale pieces. So we're going to be using a piece of music called Vindictive, which some of you who might have either been at MFM or watched the live stream will have seen. What we're doing, we're closing in from one of the shapes, but actually we're going to move from a band that is 6 people across, and we're going to open out to a band that is 8 people across. So everyone's going to be kind of moving up, positions are going to be changing a little bit, so this is a really good tool to use just to work out exactly who needs to go where, and the best way to get that so that you can then brief the guys in the band really clearly on where they need to be. So that's a little bit about PowerPoint and how I use it. Like I say, great tool to use just to make sure you're really visualizing those shapes. And that's really, really important so that we know exactly where everyone is. It's quite simple maybe to make some of the shapes themselves. What's maybe a little bit more crucial is how you then close those shapes back in again. You've still got to get back into a normal band by the end of that. So that's why we use those kind of tools just there. So once we've got that, we've got the music, we've started going through the shapes, we've got some ideas with that. We need to now start putting that to music. This is the bit where everyone enjoys watching the drum major start putting the displays out for this one, because we'll normally have a set of headphones in and we'll be wandering around seemingly aimlessly up and down the parade square, listening to what's going on and marking up the musical scores, so we can start getting an idea of what's happening. You can always tell when Horse Guards is being ready, because the chord drum major can be seen marching up and down the lawn on Whale Island. It's quite a lonely place to be when you're the only person in that playing field. What we're trying to do now is work out exactly how many sort of bars it's going to take to complete certain movements. Wherever possible, we're going to be putting all the kind of the initial movements to key points in the music, and there's a couple of reasons why we do that. Jake's got so the chord drum major is WO1 Buster Brown, and hello Helen Robinson. Yeah, that was a little while ago. So Helen was one of the instructors at the School of Music when I was in training. It feels equally odd for me sitting in this office now as well. Hello there, Piper Pise. Good to see you. So everything that we're doing, we want to try and put it to music as much as possible. A couple of reasons for that. Number one, it makes it really obvious for the guys in the band when something is going to be happening. If you can make it in a really key piece of music, people are expecting something to happen, there's a really clear point that everybody can start moving, and that's just going to help the whole display work better. It's going to help it work a little bit neater, and just make things look a little bit smarter. That's particularly important, as you'll see with one of the clips of Horse Guards that I'll show you a little bit later on. Actually, we might be in a situation where the band is splitting away from each other, and actually the people in the two bands or the four bands potentially can't see what the other guys are doing. So even though there might be a directing band, so a band that kind of everyone else is taking their lead from, if you can't see them, it makes it quite difficult to work out exactly what's going on. If everybody's going on exact points in the music, then everything will start happening at the same time. So that's really, really important. So we want to try and work everything as much as possible to clear points in the music. And then when you start briefing the band on that, you start seeing things like this. Now, I'm not going to embarrass the particular bass player by naming him on this one, but you kind of get the idea, various kind of scrawlings and markings across the page there, so that they know exactly what they need to be doing and when they need to be doing it. So this, as I mentioned earlier, this is Vindictive. This is going to be the finale piece that we're using in a beat retreat that we're doing at the end of this term. There's quite a lot happening in it. It's going to be quite complex for the guys, particularly the ones who are in their junior terms at the minute. So they can make as many notes as they need to on their dot, so that they can actually see when they're playing there what is going to be happening and when it's going to be happening. The other reason why it's really a good thing to try and get everything happening on the music is it makes it look more impressive. If you can get a key point in the music, and as the music changes, it goes into one of the bass passages maybe, or kind of starts moving into a different part of the march or the piece of music. If the movement is happening completely in time with that, it just makes it look more impressive. It makes it look more intentional, and that's a really, really important part of kind of putting the displays together. It needs to look good, but if it can look good and fit in well with what's happening in the music, then that's really important. So that's a little bit on kind of the actual design process itself. Walk it through, be clear with what you're doing, walk it through from lots of different positions in the band as well. So do it as the drum major, do it as one of the guys in the corps of drums. But for us, the clarinets, they sit right at the back of the band, of our marching bands. So make sure you run the display in your head as well as one of them. Make sure that they've got time to finish the counter marches before their next movement starts. Make sure that they can actually get themselves round into the position that they need to before you start launching into the next bit of movement. These are all really, really important parts. Make sure that you're 100% clear on it, because any extra time that you can spend planning to the nth degree in the early stages before you actually get the band out on the parade square to start rehearsing is ultimately going to save you rehearsal time. If you can try and foresee as many of the potential issues and solve them before you actually get the band out there, then that's going to be a huge benefit to you. And again, as I alluded to earlier on, in a normal summer. That's very much our busiest time in the Royal Marines Band, and sometimes you're not blessed with a lot of time to rehearse. Sometimes you've got to be quite quick about it. So all that prior preparation and planning is ultimately going to make sure that you can get through in time and get things rehearsed well, ready for that. So we talked about walking through kind of in different areas. When you're putting things together as well, so I like to utilise the corps drums quite a bit when I'm putting together displays. The corps drums and the drum majors work very much hand in hand with these kind of displays. We rely very heavily on the corps drums to make things work for the rest of the band. So for the Royal Marines, those of you know us quite well, our corps drums will always provide the frontage of the band, so they'll be in the front rank for us. They haven't got any music that they're playing from. Everything is from memory from them. So certainly when you're putting these things together, these displays together, you want to get them involved as early as you possibly can, because the sooner they can start committing it to memory, bearing in mind a lot of the movements are going to be instigated by them, then the better really. Get them getting their heads around it nice and early on. But what I will also do with them as well is in the early stages, I will get them to fill in different gaps within the band. So I might create an entire centre file, for example. So a file is the people front to rear, a rank is the people is the line left to right. So I'll get them to form a complete centre file so that I can go through the various counter marches and various movements within the display to make sure that they've got enough time to get round at the back. That's really important. You know, the more you do it, the more you get to know what's sort of how long it generally takes to complete certain movements. So for us, an 11 deep band, so that's 11 people in the files front to rear. We know that it takes 24 bars generally for that entire band to counter march. So you know that when you're putting that together, you need to allow that 24 bars before the next thing can really sort of start happening. Otherwise you start getting too many different movements happening at the same time, and it can start looking a little bit too busy. You want the movements to be nice and clear so that people can see exactly what's going on. If you have too many things, or in my opinion anyway, if you have too many things happening at the same time, it can all get a little bit confused. So good clear movements happening at good clear points for me is the kind of key to a good display. Make it really obvious to your audience what's happening so they can follow along with that. So that's kind of the design process you've gone through with the corps drums. You're starting to put it together. The next thing that you're going to be looking at is rehearsing the band themselves. Before we get there, Ron Rose flat 4. So they ask on your beating retreats on horse guards, does the senior drum major, so that's our corps drum major, have an earpiece to aid memory of movements? No, we don't use earpieces to kind of aid memory or anything like that. The only time that earpieces would be used would be if we're using a click track. So sometimes for the Festival of Remembrance, again, is another key example of that, where we might be utilising sort of a backing track as well. If we haven't got the ability to get everything that we need to with the instrumentation that we've got, then we'll sometimes use backing tracks for stuff as well, just to fill in a few different bits and pieces. But again, generally the drum majors won't have that earpiece in there. Actually, it's really important that they've got a complete situational awareness of what's going on around them. And actually, if you've got earpieces in, then that can close a lot of those extra senses off. So we don't use earpieces. Again, when it comes to the actual event itself, as the drum majors, they're the ones who have come up with this display. They've come up with all the movements. If you're in a position where you can't remember the display, you haven't worked it through enough in your own head, is the simple answer to that one. You shouldn't need to use an earpiece to aid any memory by the time you come to actually rehearsing it. There's a little bit of maybe a little bit of a cliche that gets banded around a lot, but there's this idea that you don't rehearse something until you don't make a mistake. You rehearse something until you can't make a mistake. And that's exactly the same with this. You will have gone through this so many times in your head that you are all over it by the time it comes to the actual display. That's really important, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those bits in a second. So we're into the rehearsing itself now. We've got the whole rest of the band out there. The worst thing that you can do is just throw the dots at the band, say play that, and sort of see how it goes. You want to start building things up nice and slowly. So I showed you the picture of the march card earlier. So you want to go through in little stages. If there's things that they need to mark on their parts, get them to mark it on. Once you've done a little section, then get them to walk through that, so what they've marked on their part makes sense in terms of the movement that you're going to do. If there's large sections where it's purely chord drums led, in terms of what the movements are, so band splits, that kind of thing, then walk through that with the chord drums, who again, hopefully by that point are fairly happy with what they're doing, so they can really help just make it work with the rest of the band. Get them to go through that. Go through the display, so that if there's certain positions that you're going into, or certain shapes, you've gone through everything that needs to happen before you get to that. So you've gone through the counter marches or the wheels, so that's when the band's moving to the left or to the right. Any splits that you've done, so that when you get to rehearsing that particular shape, you know that everybody is starting in the right position. There's nothing worse than mugging off the whole first part of the display, starting with the more complicated part of the display, which would make sense in some ways, unless you've made sure that everybody is actually starting in the positions that you need them to be for that point. Robert Luxon, if you struggle to play bugle when you audition, what happens? So you will be asked to play bugle wherever possible. There are some slight differences to the audition process this year for obvious reasons, but that will be covered a little bit later on. But ultimately, we're looking for potential. So it's not necessarily the end of the world if you can't play bugle. It would obviously be desirable if you could. But it's not to say that it will be a definite no. We will look and assess your trainability as well as your actual playing ability. So it's definitely still worth sort of having a look at that. And then moving on, actually good timing, Adam Sanders. Will I be involved in the audition process this year? No, I won't have anything to do with auditions this year. Largely because they're all going to be online and kind of virtual auditions, so there isn't really a lot for me to do. My role with the auditions is generally centred more around kind of getting people sized up, ready to start ordering uniforms and that kind of thing. And obviously with the guys not actually coming here, that's all being done electronically this year. So best guesses all round. So we're rehearsing the band, we've gone through, they've marked up their parts, they've walked through. If you've got the ability to play recordings of the music that you're going to use, then that is a fantastic way to start putting the display together first, because people haven't got to concentrate on playing. They can have their head in the dots, they can be marking things as they're going along, and most importantly, you can have it at a volume so that you can shout over the top of it and direct things as they're going. People learn a lot better generally by doing things rather than just talking about it, so the sooner you can get them actually doing the movements, and any techniques that you can use to facilitate that, the better. So for us, like I say, getting things recorded is absolutely vital, and that's the same for this beating retreat for the School of Music that we've got coming up. That's what we were doing just on Friday over at Whale Island. Same with smaller beat retreats within the band, all the way up to the initial stages of Horse Guards Parade, and when we start putting that together prior to the event as well. We'll have a fairly substantial sound system set up on Whale Island, which I'm sure annoys most of the people in the various offices around about. And we will play the marches and the various bits of music through that to give everybody the opportunity to kind of really focus on what's going on in the music. Once you've done that, you can then sort of start playing, and again it's a case of going through it until it's right, making sure that you're picking up on little bits and pieces. All the way through, don't let things slip, don't wait to deal with something, make sure that you're all over it right from the word go, because things will take a dip once people start playing, because all of a sudden they've got something else to concentrate on. So as a bit of a side note with that, with whatever music you've got, whatever music you're playing, it's really important that the band are already up and running with that by the time you come to do the actual marching part of that outside. There's nothing worse than learning the dots at the same time as having to learn the music and the movement as well. So actually, making sure that the band have been rehearsed and they're all over the music before you get them out on the parade square is absolutely vital to that, because it's just one less thing that they're having to focus on to too much, and actually their attention can be more on what they're doing with their feet and their bodies rather than focusing on the music itself. If at all possible, so this is going back to one of the first points that I made right at the beginning, is having eyes on what the display area is. If you can in any way replicate the size and shape of that display area to rehearse in, then that is obviously going to be ideal. If you can rehearse in as close to what the actual arena is going to look like, then that'll be ideal. But it's not always possible, so you need to try and make the best use of the space that you've got. But wherever possible, try and replicate the area. And then if you can arrange any kind of way to actually get some rehearsal time in the actual arena itself, in the actual space that you're going to be performing in, either on the day of or it's sort of in the days leading up to, then that will make life really quite easy for you as well. Because actually, once you're on the ground, people will start to find their own kind of markers, whether they're little marks on the floor, or it might be a window that they know they need to line up with, or something like that, so that they can start building a bigger picture for themselves to help them sort their dressing out and making sure that they stay kind of in the right place at the right time as well. So replicate the area in your own place of work or your own rehearsal space in the early stages, and if you can get into the space itself and rehearse there, then that will make life a lot easier as well. So that's really important. At this point, a few sort of questions coming up now regarding kind of basic training, some of the stuff that happens down at CTC, and also some of the stuff to do with the audition process. So once I'm finished with this masterclass, one of our specialist recruiters, Corporal Amy Phillips, will be jumping on the live stream straight away after me. So anything to do with kind of recruitment, auditions, what happens in basic training, all those bits and pieces, she will do her best to answer those kind of in the live stream after this one. So do stick around for that and chat to Corporal Phillips, who will answer those questions for you as well. A few more things that I'm going to chat through now, and then I will start having a filter through some of the questions and see what I can answer for you. So I'll show you a couple of clips now of the Horse Guards display that was done in 2018. We were due to be doing another one this year, but again, obvious reasons, that's been postponed for the time being. But there's a whole sort of raft of different displays that we'll do, and that will dictate how much you can kind of plan and how much you can put the display together sort of prior to the actual event. So there are things like beating retreat on Horse Guards Parade. We do that generally every 2 years or so. We know exactly what the area is like. We've done it, a multitude of times. We know the space inside out, and so for something like that, we really can plan that down to the nth degree. We know, as I alluded to earlier, we know with an 11 deep band, which is generally what we will use for Horse Guards with the mass bands. We know it takes 24 bars to countermarch the entire band. We know that we've got a display area of 90 meters by 90 meters. We know that it takes near enough bang on 10 minutes to march from where we'll set off from at Wellington Barracks down Birdcage Walk to just off the parade square. So if the event is starting at 1700, for example, we know exactly what time we need to set off from Wellington Barracks to make sure that we're down in position in time to start marching on once the corps of drums have finished their prelims or the sort of preliminary bugle calls. Sort of prior to the start of that. So we can go right down to the tiny details with that. Absolutely every movement that we do in that will be linked into the music in some way, because we've got the ability to do that. Same with the Festival of Remembrance of the Albert Hall or Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo, things like that, things that we do on a regular basis. But then also, you might be going to an area where you might not have seen the display area, you might not have seen exactly what it's going to look like, or it's just a different type of display. So with something like that, I would have key points in the music where I knew certain things needed to happen, certain shapes were going to be made, but I wouldn't necessarily plan every single thing or sort of put every single movement down to music leading up to that, because actually all you're doing there is introducing in flexibility in the display, and sometimes you really need to be flexible. You need to be able to adjust to the ground. You need to be able to adjust to a display area that is a completely different shape to what you've already seen or what you have been told is going to be there. Things change all the time, so you need to have that flexibility. So for that responsibility, I put much more on myself. I know where they need to be and in what position they need to be at a certain point in music. It's down to me, live on the ground, to make sure that the band are in that position ready to do that. And that's purely down to where I'm countermarching people, when I wheel, when I'm going to halt them, all these kind of things that I can actually adjust on the day to make sure that that we're kind of linked into that. So let's throw up now then one of these. So this is quite a good demonstration then. This is right at the very start of the Horse Guards display. So the corps drums are doing their preliminary bugle calls. We will have halted normally at a specific lamppost just down the way a little bit. It's the same place every year. And we know that means we set off at a certain point in the bugle calls, which puts us exactly on the edge of Horse Guards parade there. So as soon as the bugle calls are finished, we're straight into Sarri Murray, which is the march past the Royal Marines Commandos. That's what we will traditionally march on to Horse Guards parade 2 for one of these events. And that's all worked out so that we're hitting the edge of the square at exactly the right point. Same every year, and we're sort of making sure that works. We also know that from the edge of that display area, it takes one complete go through the main tune to get the band into position and ready for where they need to be to open out into the 20 across band that will normally start the display. So you see the corps drums there, they're starting to move out and kind of take up their various positions. We're getting to the end of the first time through the tune now, so this is what I'm talking about, things happening on musical phrases. You'll see the band now split out and open out into a 20 across band. Again, all happening exactly on the music, so everybody has got that clear point where they need to move, which just makes everything look smarter. Everybody's got that that sort of key point that they're aiming for, just to make sure that everything is kind of sorted. So you get the idea with that one. So we'll move on to this next one here. So this is part way through the display now. Just talking over the Principal Director of Music who's narrating that one. So this is a piece of music called Gibraltar. You can see that the band has already split. They're passing through each other now. You will have noticed that as soon as the 2 3-beat rolls finished at the start of the tune, that was the point at which the corps of drums were crossing bang on the centre of the display area. So this is what I was talking about earlier on. It's so important for everything to be on musical points for this one, because what you've got now is 2 bands that can't see each other. They're marching in opposite directions. You've got drum majors who are having to give various signals, who can't see the other drum majors. They can't see the corps drum major who would normally be leading it. He's put himself in a different position for this. And actually, just to make things even more fun, the band are now going to split from those 2 bands. They're going to wheel out from each other, and they're now splitting into 4 bands who are going to move around the perimeter of the parade area. In answer to some of the earlier questions about sort of some of the favourite tunes, Gibraltar, that's one of my favourite marches, written by a former Principal Director of Music, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Waterer. One of my favourite marches, this one. So you can see in that shot there, the bands are split into 4 now, so none of them are facing each other. They're all marching in different directions. So everything needs to happen on these kind of musical points. So the bands are just starting to wheel there on that one. You'll see the drum major as he comes round now. Again, he's going on a musical point to bring the staff back over. So we don't refer to it as a mace. Referring to one of the questions earlier, we call it staff. All of that's happening again on those musical points, so that we know that even though we can't see everyone else, there's the corps drum major right in the middle of the parade square there, you can see him. We know that we're moving at exactly the same time, and everything's kind of in sync with what's going on for other people. What will happen throughout this, you might have spotted it with some of them, is there will be a directing band. So one of those 4 bands will be nominated as the directing band, and all the other bass drummers within the other 3 bands that are around, they will be getting eyes on that band at all times. So they will be turning their heads and making sure that what they're playing is in time with the step. They're not listening for what's going on, because there's quite a bit of delay. Those of you who have been up to Horse Guards before and seen things happen there will know that there's quite a bit of sort of delay when you start splitting the band. So they'll be looking at the feet. They'll be looking to see exactly what the pace is doing. They'll also be watching the stick work that the corps of drums are doing, because that links in with the pace as well. and they'll be making sure that that what they're playing, that bass drum beat is bang in time with that, so that it's the same across the whole board. Again, looking at the drum majors there, everything's happening on musical points. Chord drum major has taken up his position again now, directing one of the two bands, as the bands then kind of move out again. Okay, so you kind of get the idea, hopefully, with that. That's quite a good demonstration. You can see the bass drummer there actually physically turning his body so that he can see what the other band is doing. It's really, really important, otherwise things will just get completely out of time, and there's not really a lot too much more awkward than having two bands coming into each other, sort of completely out of time with each other. So it's really, really important that happens all the time. Again, drum majors all working exactly what's going on there, all into those musical phrases. So generally speaking, those kind of key, so this is called Gibraltar, Jasmine W18, this piece of music called Gibraltar. So what will generally happen is we will engineer it so that the chord drums, that front rank of chord drums, will be starting the movements or starting the counter march or starting the wheel, whatever it might be, bang on the phrase of music. So for us as drum majors, we then need to work backwards from that. We need to know exactly how many bars it takes us to start the signal, to give the signal, to move the staff into the various different positions, so that we're doing what we're doing slightly before when the chord drums then need to move. So everything kind of gets reverse engineered from that. Movements happen to the phrase of the music, and then what I'm doing as a drum major in front, I'm reverse engineering from that to make sure that I'm giving everything in kind of the correct time. So we'll go through sort of some of the questions then that kind of been asked. So I'm just having a bit of a scroll through. As I mentioned, anything kind of to do with recruitment or anything like that will get covered off by Corporal Phillips later on, once we kind of move on from that one. Lots of people asking about the Trafalgar Parade this year. That's all Sea Cadet stuff that we don't tend to get involved in, so I can't possibly say what's gonna happen with that. I think it's the same for everybody at the minute. Lots of things, lots of events have got kind of big question marks over the top of them. So Paul Graham, 29, asked, when you move the mace around, do you choose when to move it, or is it rehearsed to the music? So as I mentioned, just to be pernickety, we refer to it as a staff. But again, it will depend on the display, and it will depend on how many drum majors there are. So if I'm out the front of the band on my own, I haven't got to be in time with anyone else. I'm not having to synchronise my movements up with any other drum majors. So I will have an idea of what I want to do. Obviously, specific signals to give to the band will need to be in specific places to make that happen at the right time. But any of the other kind of flourishes or bits and pieces that we do, so swings and stars, is one of the things that you might have seen us do, and that's when the staff actually gets sort of spun around as well. I will know what to do with that. I'll know sort of when that I want to do it, but I won't necessarily rehearse it to the music. Specifically, I might try and aim again for kind of key points in the music, just because that will give it a little bit more sort of visual and kind of oral impact. However, Horse Guards, or kind of any sort of event, Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo, where we have multiple drum majors on, then yes, everything will be rehearsed to the music, because everything needs to happen at exactly the same time, and we can't always just use the force and kind of look into the chord drum major every single time. So that will be rehearsed. We'll know exactly at what point in the music certain signals or certain movements will happen. We'll know exactly how many bars we're counting for each one. So everything will get kind of rehearsed all the way down to the kind of the nth degree on that one. So what other questions have we got? We've answered some of the ones on the bugle. Talked about the earpieces. We don't use earpieces ourselves. Talked about Trafalgar. So a little bit of a plug then. So one of the questions here is, the 2020 Guildhall display will be going ahead this year, question mark. Not in the guise that it normally would do. So normally at the School of Music, we put on a concert at the Portsmouth Guildhall on a Saturday afternoon, immediately followed by a big beating retreat display that happens out in the Guildhall Square. That won't be happening this year. What we are doing instead is we will be performing a beating retreat on the parade square at Whale Island, and we will be filming it. So that will be released at some point in August, all being well. So we will produce a video that will be released on kind of the band service YouTube, Facebook, etc. Sort of similar to what we've done with some of the MFM videos and the Beat and Retreat videos, the Horse Guards videos that have been released at various times. So keep your eye open on the various kind of Twitter feeds. You've got SO1 band service, Major Hugh Williams. I'm sure will be retweeting various bits and pieces. Our current Director of Music Training, Major Ian Davis, will be having it on the Royal Marines School of Music Twitter page, as well as the Royal Marines Band Service Facebook pages, Instagram and Twitter. So keep your eyes open for that one. Date to be confirmed when that will be released, but we will be doing something and we will be putting it out so that people can see. That's a really key event for primarily for our guys who are passing out into the band. But yes, we will be doing that. The guys have been doing a fantastic job while we've been working here. So obviously the coronavirus situation has played havoc with lots of things. What's happened with our guys is actually they've been locked down into effectively what is a very large but a secure household. So training has been able to continue here at the School of Music. We've introduced various elements of social distancing between instructors, minimising the number of instructors who are around, lots of remote teaching going on, lots of civilian professorial staff teaching remotely, but training has continued. And actually one of the big achievements for us here at the School of Music is nobody sort of as it stands at the minute will be disadvantaged from a time point of view staying in training as a result of this. Everyone is still looking to pass out on schedule, which is fantastic. It's been a challenging few months for everybody here, as it obviously has been for so many people, but training has continued, and because we've been in this position of sort of effectively household isolation, it's enabled us to continue doing the parade training and continue kind of working towards this. So sometime in August, keep your eyes open for that. That will be coming through. Let's have a look at what else we've got coming up here then. So Jake Scott made a note of your question earlier on. So you say, Drum Major, if your band is marching past the saluting base, should the Drum Major be making sure the band plays the regimental march? Absolutely, yeah, that's a really, really important question, which I will try and answer nice and quickly for you as time is marching on. Yes, we will always make sure that we're playing our regimental march past. So Life on the Ocean Wave is the regimental march past of the Royal Marines. So the way we will do that, generally accepted as kind of SOPs for our guys in the band. Generally for a march round, any kind of parade, we will alternate playing a musical march followed by a set of drum solos, followed by another march, etc. So we'll have an idea where that dais is, although sometimes that moves. As I'm kind of seeing that, I'm going to make sure that the band are playing, or the corps drums rather, are playing a set of drum solos. Normally a set of drum solos would be cut off with a signal with my hand rather than with the staff. And so all that happens is when it gets to a point where I cut off the drum solos using my staff instead of my hand to give the signal, that's then a signal for the whole rest of the band to know that the next march they're going to be playing is Life on the Ocean Wave. And that is the top tip that we use to make sure that we are always playing the right piece of music as we get to that saluting die. So yeah, good question, and that is what we do. Just trying to think, just have a look through. I think that was most of the questions that we've got. If anybody's got any other quick questions, I've got 1 minute 30 seconds left if anyone wants to kind of jump on. What's your favourite drum tune or your favourite formation? So one of my favourite drum statics that we used to play was a piece called Royal Oak, which I like, and then a set of drum solos. Some of our traditional ones I used to enjoy playing Claymores. Some of you may well have seen that. Favourite formations, it chops and changes. You get different ideas and you get passionate about different bits and pieces. So one question that's just come in there, nice to sneak that one in with a minute remaining. Why the buglers at the front? So I'm not going to embarrass myself by giving you the exact date, but there was the the main difference with us in the Royal Marines is that we do have our corps of drums at the front, and that was down to a decision made by a director of music in the 1950s, I believe, that he wanted a flat line of corps of drums to give a little bit more impact at the front of the band, and from that time on, that's where we've kept them. Most other military bands don't do that. They'll have a couple of percussionists who are sort of within the band, so that makes us quite unique in the sort of professional marching band side of it. But actually, that's emulated by quite a lot of the cadet bands and kind of the various other bands that kind of do things as well. So there we go. Right, I've got 10 seconds left, so I'm going to have to wrap things up. Any questions, recruitment, auditions, anything like that, like I say, Corporal Phillips will be jumping on in just a few seconds. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it.